Thank you so much, Lon. You know, I've had people sing my talk for me that I've never met before, and we never talked about it. I've never had someone intro a song that was also what I intended to say for my talk. So I am grateful to know that there is only one mind and that we are both in it. So it's a little interesting to me that this is our hopefully final broadcast from home Sunday, although it's nice to know we have the backup if we need it. And the talk is called Stepping Up. Remember when all of this started, I thought, I can't do this without people in front of me, and I can't do this without this, that, and the other 15 things I need. And now I'm like, but I can't, but I don't know how to do it. And we spent so much time, and we finally got me a little less orange. This good Catholic girl was never meant to look quite so orange. And how is this going to work? Because I've forgotten what it's like to be on a platform. I'm sure it'll all come back quickly. I'm sure it'll start feeling like a whole new normal very quickly. And there's a part of me that's going, I have to wear shoes. How is that going to work? But, you know, as we step up into our magnificence, as we step up into our next level of evolution, which is what we do as religious scientists, as we do that, there is always that moment of perhaps strain or stress or having to reach for something. As I think of stepping up on steps, I mean, there's a reason they have those things at gyms where you just climb steps incessantly and it really works you. Or not me, but you perhaps. Part of our vision, our grand vision for the centers for spiritual living worldwide, talks about, well, I'll just read it to you. We envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought. A world where every person discovers their own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. So the first part of that is awakening to our spiritual magnificence personally, so that we can do it as the one race that is humanity. Have you ever noticed that some people have that spiritual awakening, but they hit the snooze button and try and go back to sleep? Because there's that inkling of, wow, you know, if I were awakened to my magnificence, I would have to treat my body better. I would have to treat my brothers and sisters better. I would have to stop doing all the old comfortable things that, you know, perhaps there's an addiction issue. Most of us have some addiction to something. But perhaps it's easier to stay drunk or drugged or checked out watching so-called reality TV. Perhaps it's easier in some ways to stay asleep. And yet, that is not who we are and not why we came to this planet in order to live a full life. You can't do that while you're just tucked away in bed and refusing to interact with yourself or anyone else. And so we awaken to our spiritual magnificence. And here's the thing about it that nobody warned me about that I may as well just let you in on. Spirit will first kind of touch you, touch your heart, kind of maybe give you some serendipities, a little bit of coincidence to kind of help you wake up gently. If you ignore those, next you're going to get the tap on the shoulder. Hey, come on now. It's time to get up. It's time to wake up. If you ignore that, you get what we lovingly call the cosmic 2x4. The 2x4 is often some level of trauma and drama that is very, very unfun. That is very, very painful. It might even be incredibly expensive to some people. But one way or another, you are here on this planet to awaken to your spiritual magnificence, to recognize the Christ or the Buddha or the Arjuna or whoever within you, for Brahma to meet Atman, for all of however you want to describe it, you are here to awaken. That is what you came here to do. And while you can decide when you're going to do it, and to a degree, you can decide how much you're going to suffer in the process, you're going to do it. And there's a big part of you, a part of your soul that you might be trying to ignore, that is really ready and wants to do it, is eager to do this. And yes, there might be some reasons to put it off. They're not good reasons. They might seem like very logical reasons. You know, I will awaken to my spiritual magnificence as soon as I lose 10 pounds. Or I will awaken to my spiritual magnificence and be in my joy after I meet the perfect partner. Trouble with the perfect partner is that they're looking for the perfect partner too. And so it's easier to just be the perfect partner for yourself, by the way. So as Joseph Campbell teaches, we have to be willing to let go of the life we had planned so that as to have the life that is waiting for us. I remember turning 30 and thinking, what's wrong with this picture? I am not married. I don't have the PhD yet. I don't feel particularly successful financially. That was the life I had planned. And yet Spirit had a deeper calling for me. This is not what I thought I would be doing. And that's okay, because I've decided that this is the best gig on the planet. And so I'm more than happy to have given up my, frankly, littler plans in order to live this life, in order to find out what true abundance means. It's not just the money, guys. We awaken to the truth that in order to be truly abundant and prosperous, we have to have loving friends with whom we have relationships that work. We also have to have work that is fulfilling. We also have to have all sorts of other goodies and peace of mind. And so there is that within each and every one of us that already knows that. And so I'm here simply to remind you that you can choose this awakening and step up into your magnificence with or without the suffering part. Now, it was Easter not very long ago. And so I, as I often do, take a look at the story of both Passover, which is when the people who became Israel left Egypt and the land of slavery in order to go to a promised land. It's also in Judeo-Christian tradition, the time when Jesus, who we call the master teacher, the great example, but not the great exception, was crucified, died, was buried, and rose again on the third day. Before he was crucified, they did the Last Supper, and he got together with his friends and his community to celebrate in the way that all Jews did at the time, to celebrate Passover. But Jesus knew what was coming. He knew what he'd signed on for. He was about to awaken himself and a whole bunch of other people in a way that was very dramatic. He was about to become the cosmic 2x4. And so he went out to a place called Gethsemane, which is a specific garden. And he brought with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, if you read the book of Matthew. The sons of Zebedee were James and John. And he went slightly apart from them and began to pray. And he was just scared. He was facing quite the awakening moment. He was having to step up in his own faith. And his friends fell asleep on him. His friends that he had brought for support went to sleep. And according to the book of Matthew in the translation called the Lamsa Bible, it talks about how he had to go wake them up 3 times. And the third time he said, never mind, stay asleep if you want to. The hour is upon us. Now, in our tradition, we're not worried about whether it was 1 time or 7 times. It doesn't matter what he said exactly. What matters to us is that this is a person who taught in teaching stories and comes from a whole tradition and culture in which teaching stories are everywhere. And so we're going to take this as a teaching story and use it as a metaphysical example of what each and every one of us does. You see, the Garden of Gethsemane, in metaphysical terms, Gethsemane is an oil press. Oil is the sacred oil, the oil we use to light the sacred lamps in the holies of holies. It creates olive oil. So you take an olive and you smoosh it in there, and all the good stuff that you're going to keep comes out, and that which no longer serves is tossed away. This, I cannot imagine, is a comfortable experience for the olive. And yet it is what each and every one of us does. According to Charles Fillmore, who wrote the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, metaphysically, Gethsemane stands for the, quote, struggle that takes place within the consciousness when truth is realized as the one reality. That's capital T truth, is realized as the one reality. All the good is pressed out and saved, and the error, or what some people would call sin thinking or error thinking, the mistakes, the bad data, is denied away. It's the struggle that takes place within the consciousness when we awaken to our magnificence, and everything in us says, no, that's not me. That's too big. That's too loud. That's too in front of a crowd. That's too much. I've been told I should play small and not offend anybody. I've been told that, I've noticed what we do to our spiritual heroes. We tend to crucify them. It's the struggle that happens within each and every one of us when we start becoming more honest about who we truly are. This is not about getting arrogant. This is about getting humble in the right sense, in the sense of, as my 12-step friends would say, our ego gets right-sized. Humility is when your ego, who you think you are, is accurate. Thou art that. Thou art the sons and daughters of God right now, without having to change your haircut or your weight or your bank account or who you're in a relationship with. Right here, right now, in this moment, no matter what you think of yourself, you are one of the outpicturing of one of God's greatest, most loving thoughts. God had a good idea and it took form as you, just as you are and just as you are not. Now, our job is to step into that. And Jesus was trying to do that. But even Jesus, the master teacher, showed us that this is, well, we say, change your thinking, change your life. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? I almost want to smack whoever taught me that first, because they didn't read me the warning label. Yes, it sounds simple, but it doesn't sound easy. Not once you understand it correctly. And so Jesus brought his friends with him. He brought the metaphysically embodied energy of wisdom, that is James, love, that is John, and Peter, which is faith. He brought with him, to the best of his ability, wisdom, love, and faith as he walked into this great trial. Now, the fact that they went to sleep, I think haven't we all done that? We get ready to stand up and leave the relationship that doesn't work, leave the job that doesn't work, go into a new home, and we're not entirely sure how this is going to work, and we're not entirely feeling all that safe right now. Our rut looks, the rut we have been in looks really, really comfy, and maybe we could splash some paint up there and it will look like a whole new rut. But when we go into these new situations and we're awakening to our spiritual magnificence, sometimes the part of us that is consciously aware of bringing our faith with us, bringing the infinite love with us, bringing our best wisdom with us, that part goes to sleep. Luckily, the moment is upon us anyway. And so no matter what we thought we were ready for, whatever we have signed on to do, including waking up, it's going to happen. And so Jesus, in this story, models for us being willing to walk into our greatness, walk into these huge experiences of being pressed down and all of the good being collected, and that is what is kept, and letting that which no longer serves us fall away. As we step up into our spiritual magnificence, some of our old habits are going to fall away. Again, my 12-step friends talk about having a God-shaped hole in the soul. Many of us do. Many of us have that experience of something is missing in my life. And the problem is what it is most correctly or best filled with is the divine. And so the first thing that we do as we awaken is awaken to a better idea of God. If your old idea of God was some old dude who looked suspiciously like Zeus, sitting up on a cloud, flinging lightning bolts every time you accidentally cussed, perhaps there's a bigger idea available to you. Perhaps it's time to recognize the love that God is. Perhaps it's time for you to recognize that God is not petty and God is not a tyrant, that God actually likes you. Did that ever occur to you? God likes you. God would sit down and have a beer with you if that was something that you did with your friends. And that is what God wants. And so our job is to wake up not to how sinful we are, how broken we are, not to continue this litany of, oh, it's so awful and I'm so awful and God hates me and I'm going to, wait, I can't even eat the worm because that belongs to God too. What if what we're awakening to is actually our magnificence? Now, I've worked with kids who have been traumatized. I've worked with adults who have been traumatized. I have, back in my counseling days, I specialized in child abuse and adults who had survived child abuse. And so, no matter how many personalities they had, they all sat in front of me in one body. And I have heard some stories. And what was most painful was healing that trauma. In some cases, the healing seemed more painful than the original trauma. And so the original trauma, our belief in original sin, our belief that we could be separate from God, that is more painful than the actual stepping into that is what causes the pain of stepping into the light and realizing it was never our fault. It was never our issue. It might have belonged to somebody who was doing the best they could. And so we step up into the unknown, recognizing that there's some stuff we're going to have to do. We're going to have to be vulnerable and allow some of the other sons and daughters of the divine to be part of our lives, to love us, to let God love us through our community. That is what this community does. Brene Brown writes, daring greatly means the courage to be vulnerable. It means to show up and be seen. To ask for what you need. Ooh, that's a scary one sometimes, because what if they say no, or once again tell you that you're not worthy of whatever it is you think you need? To ask for what you need, to talk about how you're feeling, to have the hard conversations. To have the hard conversations in which you admit to your magnificence, in which you admit to the power and the love that God is in you, and the joy that is your birthright. What if God, no matter how big your God is in this moment, no matter how strong and divine and powerful you feel in this moment, what if you're still underestimating yourself? I'll never forget being in my car, walking away from a hard conversation that maybe I didn't do so well, or maybe the other person just wasn't available for, and driving away in my car and shouting, my God is bigger than my fear. My God is bigger than this situation. My God better get off his great big old butt and deal with this. Okay, sometimes the way I pray is not exactly CSL approved. Sometimes it's just a growl toward the sky that says, would you please remember with me in this moment that none of this is any realer than it needs to be, and could we please move on from this mess? Sometimes it's a simple 4-letter word, and that's okay too. If that is how you pray, then let that be so. So long as what the heart and the mind are saying is, this is unworthy of the infinite spirit, and therefore I'm going to get a bigger idea. I'm going to remember my God is bigger. I'm going to bring my divine wisdom with me into whatever the situation is, and I trust that it's with me whether I am comfortable or not. Marianne Williamson is famous for having written, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We have been told for generations to be afraid of our brokenness, to be afraid of our darkness. It was bad data all along. It was not true. It was inaccurate. You are not broken, and you don't have to be afraid of who lives in your skin. The divine within you is already perfect, perfect, whole, and complete. Perfect in the sense of lacking nothing that is essential. Not perfect as in if you mess up, you get thrown out, but perfect in the sense of the Greek word for perfect, which means lacking nothing essential. You're already whole. Everything you need is already within you. But we have been taught in most cultures on earth right now that we're not good enough, that we're somehow lacking, that we're miserable sinners, that we're bad and broken, that original sin means that we're all cursed. We don't teach that here. We recognize a higher truth. And one of the ways we come to that higher truth is through our form of prayer. And so I invite you to join me in that now, and maybe just hang on tight to your chair, even if it feels like your Peter, James, and John have gone to sleep. I invite you to be here now in this very moment with me in the moment of awakening. If it helps you to close your eyes, that's great. Get comfortable, stand up, sit down, doesn't matter. Right here and now, God is. God, that is the shortened, simple name for the infinite, almighty creator. The powerful being that is infinite love and power and peace. The infinite being that created time and is within time and surrounds it, that is within my skin and surrounds it, that took on the entire multiverse as its skin, that had a thought of love and contemplated itself, and this world sprang into being along with all of the occupants of it. Every stone, every flower, every bee, every human being is the divine being in form, in its many, many different forms. And so as I speak my word, it is that one being speaking through me about itself in all of its forms. I speak my word on behalf of all sentient beings, on behalf of all beings everywhere, forwards and backwards in time. And what I stand witness to is the gloriousness of the divine, the glorious soul that inhabits every sentient being. This soul that is the very essence of love, of prosperity, of good of all kinds. And so I release and deny, just like the old broken up bits of the olive in the pit. I throw away the old bad data which says we are broken or bad or somehow lacking or undeserving. I throw away the idea that we can be separated from our God, from our good, and I stand in the shining truth of magnificence, of the world that works for everyone, for everyone. For each of us individually and collectively, I call forth the experience that is worthy of the sons and daughters of the Most High. The great mystery itself in form is now being experienced by all of us, and I call forth a clearer experience, a more direct experience, a greater awareness, a greater consciousness of the love that is for us. And having stood witness to all of this, I stand in awe and gratitude of what really is, and I release it to the law of cause and effect, to the natural law that brings it into form without any help or hindrance from me. I let it all be, and together we affirm, and so it is.